We're going to tell you about Saudi Arabia because we're going to follow the money. Now, President Biden will in fact visit Saudi Arabia on his upcoming trip to the Middle East. This has been speculated about for days, but it was now confirmed. So why do we care? Well, one reason is that on the campaign trail, President Biden promised to give the cold shoulder to Saudi Arabia.
Khashoggi was in fact murdered and dismembered, and I believe in the order of the Crown Prince. And I would make it very clear, we were not going to in fact sell more weapons to them. We were going to in fact make them pay the price and make them in fact the pariah that they are. There's very little social redeeming value in the present government in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, very little social redeeming value, right? But we're going to talk about the economic redeeming value. Now, he mentions here Khashoggi. He's talking about Kamal Khashoggi, who was a Saudi-born journalist that was violently murdered after he was captured at the Saudi embassy in Turkey. He was actually lured there when he was trying to get married, and they told him he needed this specific document. The CIA says that the Saudi government was responsible. Most people agree on that. In fact, intelligence was that 7 of the 15 hitmen were the personal bodyguards of MBS. Now, MBS is the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. So will the president meet with MBS? The first question was, okay, are you going to Saudi Arabia when you said you wouldn't? Yes. Okay. Are you going to meet with MBS? According to The Guardian, right? The White House said it had no new travel plans to announce, but made clear there was no barrier to Biden meeting the Crown Prince. So when The Guardian reported this meeting a few weeks ago, it said that this meeting, now listen to this, is the culmination of half a dozen of discreet visits to the Saudi kingdom over the last 2 years by President Biden's top Middle East advisor, Brett McGurk, and his special envoy for energy affairs, Amos Hochstein. So the Biden administration is doing this, and it's a big deal, but they have been doing this. And in a second, I'm going to tell you more about why they're going to do this.
Well, let's backtrack a little bit because there's some things I wanted to say, which is about, look, the way that they took Trump to task for this. Remember when President Trump went and it was the whole pomp and circumstance with him doing the dance with the swords and all of this. I mean, I was on the air at the time going live where we were covering this, like the landing of the jet, the landing of Air Force One, the whole big dinner and the big to-do. I think even the Crown Prince at the time gave President Trump a tiger-skinned robe, killed like a rare tiger skin. So CNN, here was CNN. Let's put up this CNN on Trump in Saudi Arabia. This is how CNN wrote it at the time. And this is how, so let's put this up on the screen. It's CNN. This was CNN's take on this. By letting Saudi Arabia get away with the murder of U.S.-based journalist Jamal Khashoggi, the president sent a message of startling clarity about how the United States will conduct its business in the world. Trump effectively told global despots that if they side with him, Washington will turn a blind eye to actions that infringe traditional U.S. values. Trump made clear that Washington has a price, that principles that generations of Americans have cherished are for sale. Like we're selling ourselves. It doesn't matter about Khashoggi. We're just selling our soul to this. And, again, the New York Times then took this on as well. And I'm going to read this from the New York Times. This was on Trump as well. Trump stands up for Saudi Arabian values. This was how the New York Times played it, right? And here is the full screen from the New York Times. If we want to take this, I think, do we have that one or no? But yeah, so again, all sorts of liberal publications were taking the president to task. You're literally cozying up with this regime, right? And it's actually kind of funny. If you take my laptop, Philip, this was yesterday. This was Jean-Pierre. This was the White House press secretary, basically calling the Saudis a regime. This let slip. She slipped out with this one. White House press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre came very close to committing the cardinal sin of referring to a U.S.-aligned nation as a regime on Monday. Basically, you don't believe they're a democracy. You don't believe they're a country on par with us. You believe they're a regime. You're a terrorist regime.
Well, and go back to that. go back to that shot. Even the sign language lady is saying, "No, stop."
Yeah, look at that. Yeah, look at that on my laptop.
Well, okay, but then why would he do this, right? When all of the American press is saying, you said you wouldn't go there, right? We have the tape that we just rolled, right? Well, the White House, in an official statement, says that while in Saudi Arabia, the president will discuss a range of bilateral, we have this on screen if you want to put up. There we go. The White House gives us this sort of gobbledygook of he will discuss means for expanding regional economic and security cooperation, including new and promising infrastructure and climate initiatives, as well as deterring threats from Iran, advancing human rights. Like, it's just a blah, 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 right? Just a bunch of like political speak of what he's going to do there, which, okay, that's like what you expect from a press release. But why does he need to do it in person? Well, here's why. Because Saudi Arabia has already told the U.S. no to what it wants. So the U.S. asked Saudi Arabia in February to pump more oil, and they said no. If you take this full screen here, this was reported back in February that the U.S. said, we want you to pump more oil because we have a supply problem. We don't want to hit high gas prices. Why would Saudi Arabia say no? Because they don't want to flood the market with too much oil. They have a set amount that they will export according to OPEC, which keeps their profit margins at a safe place. And they do not want to flood the market with oil, which lowers their profit margin just because the United States asked, and they're not super happy with the United States anyway. So why would they do this if they don't have to? Well, here's another thing that the U.S. is worried about is Saudi Arabia becoming friends with China. In March, the Wall Street Journal reported that Saudi Arabia is willing to sell oil to China in yuan, right? Yuan. So according to the Wall Street Journal, China buys more than 25% of the oil that Saudi Arabia exports. If priced in yuan, those sales would boost the standing of China's currency. The Saudis are also considering including the yuan-denominated futures contract known as the petro yuan. You don't like the way I'm saying that? How would you say this word? Petro yuan.
Yeah, you're
okay. So they're worried that they will factor this into the pricing model of Saudi Arabian oil company known as Aramco. So this is we're following the money, right? Because the United States has said, "Will you please open up more oil?" They said no. And then they're not answering the calls, right, of the United States. But they are picking up the phone to China, and they're willing to discuss this petro yuan, right? So now the Saudi rial is pegged to the US dollar. So Saudi Arabia wouldn't do anything really to harm the dollar, but maybe they're hedging their bets, which begs the question, what would the world look like if the petro yuan became the oil industry's currency of choice instead of the dollar? So that's why, obviously, the president will take some egg on his face for going against a campaign promise to give Saudi Arabia the cold shoulder, if it means protecting the American hegemony of oil and dollars and preventing China from doing that.
Yeah, but there's a history here. I mean, and look, again, we talked about Trump, but it goes back to Obama and Biden. So the enormous cache of sophisticated weapons. So let's put up this Glenn Greenwald piece. This reminds us all about the cozying up to these guys. So, Biden, when he was there with Obama, they did this. So here's Glenn Greenwald's piece we can put on the screen. It says, beyond the enormous cache of sophisticated weapons, Obama-Biden transferred to the Saudis to use against Yemen and anyone else they decided to target. The Snowden archive revealed that Obama ordered significant increases in the amount and the type of intelligence technologies and raw intelligence provided by the NSA to the Saudi regime. The intelligence was and is used by Saudi autocrats not only to identify Yemeni bombing targets, but also to subject its own domestic population to rigid, virtually ubiquitous surveillance, a regime of monitoring used to brutally suppress any dissent or opposition to the Saudi regime.
Well, okay, but that is more recent history. In a book about the sort of the establishment of the dollar as a dominant currency, author David Spiro, in his book Hidden Greed, The American Hegemony, talks about how Saudi Arabia was really responsible for the dollar being the basis of oil exchange, because Saudi Arabia went around to its neighbors and convinced them to sell oil on the dollar instead of whatever other currency they wanted. So if Saudi Arabia established the dollar as global currency, they can unestablish it too, possibly, right? I mean, this is a possibility, but it's a possibility that this administration, and in fact, any American administration, will want to prevent.
I want to take Caitlin Johnstone's take on this, because I thought this was great. All of this talk about American hegemony and our sort of like oil for dollars and US dollars, and we're going to go to Chinese yuan and all of this. She takes a step back and says, well, wait a second, all of this hand-wringing about this, that actually Mohammed bin Salman sullies Saudi Arabia's good name with actually plans to meet U.S. president. Like, she's taking the opposite strategy on this, the opposite tact. And then she goes on to say in a tweet, or in a piece that she wrote this morning, all this hand-wringing about a U.S. president visiting a Saudi leader overlooks the fact that the Biden administration openly acknowledges the presence of thousands of U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia, and that the U.S. already actively collaborates with Saudi royalty in myriad ways with immensely far-reaching consequences. More to the point, though, the controversy over Biden's meeting with MBS ignores the fact that the U.S. is quantifiably a far more murderous and tyrannical regime than Saudi Arabia. After all, we're supplying their weapons that they're using to attack Syria.
Yes.
Yemen.
Yeah.
Right? So we are like by a landslide. And it's amazing. I like her sort of take on this. It's like the inverse of we're worried about us interacting with him, who is a murderous tyrant. By no stretch of the imagination does it even come close to Biden's track record on this. And
right. I mean, not to mention
Iraq.
all the recent drone strikes that are killing civilians, and the United States answer is mistakes were made, right?
Right.
We don't get a lack of ability. I don't know. I don't like this, like, comparing killing, like, well, they kill too. And, you know, I don't think that's productive.
But the press on the American side is, well, you better be careful. You heard from a number of Democrats over the past 24 hours who came out. They're like, I don't know if this is a good move for you right now, Joe. Like, they were interviewed in a number of different press pieces over the past 24 hours. Hey, the president is going to go there. A number of Democrats came forward like, things are pretty bad right now. I don't know if you want to add another pain point right now. A bad PR. They're calling it like a bad PR move. Like Chris Murphy, Democrats, saying it's like a bad PR move right now. Yeah, we don't want you to go see the guy.
Our actions already led to Russia going off the U.S. dollar and going to the ruble. So, like, now a country, they're going to see in other countries that have been thinking, gosh, I wish we could do that. We're so dependent on this dollar that's becoming less and less valuable. And like Putin does it, and then all of a sudden his economy is flourishing from it. So, you know, maybe more people will do it now.
Well, a number of countries are starting to look at doing that, right?
Well, yes, that's why we have a Cold War that we've been discussing at length.
Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. You know, we've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website, to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc, not .com.